When a man leaves first, he isn't running, he's choosing self-respect. His absence creates clarity, shifts the power, and forces her to feel what she ignored. Women chase the man who walks away because he shows strength, certainty, and emotional leadership. His value rises the moment he stops waiting to be chosen. When you leave first, you send a message far louder than any argument, explanation, or emotional outburst ever could. You communicate through action, not words, and that action rewrites the entire dynamic of the connection. Most people cling tighter when they feel someone slipping away. They negotiate, they plead, they chase, or they compromise themselves. But the man who walks away before disrespect grows, before confusion becomes chaos, before emotional imbalance becomes normal, he shifts everything. He proves he's not operating from fear. He proves he's willing to lose someone rather than lose himself. Walking away isn't about punishment or manipulation. It's about reclaiming your voice in a place where your voice wasn't being heard. It's about resetting the balance when you feel the scales tipping against your peace. When you choose distance instead of debate, silence instead of desperation, calm instead of chaos, you create a new space where your presence is finally felt. And ironically, it's only in your absence that many women realize the weight of your presence. Leaving first disrupts the pattern she's familiar with. She expects reassurance, chasing, convincing, or proving. But when you don't do any of that, it forces her to reconsider everything she assumed about you. Suddenly, you're not predictable. You're not another man trying to win her. You're a man who values his own sense of self enough to step back when something feels misaligned. That shift alone rewires how she sees you. It also changes how she sees herself in relation to you. When you walk away, you remove her ability to control the pace, the direction, or the emotional tone of the connection. She realizes you weren't depending on her validation or approval. You weren't staying because you needed her. You were staying because you chose her. And once that choice disappears, she's left questioning whether she misread your strength, your intentions, or your value. Your decision to leave first creates emotional distance, and distance breeds realization. She begins to feel the silence where your presence used to be. She feels the absence of your consistency, your attention, your energy. And in that space, she begins to understand just how much balance you are bringing into the dynamic. She begins to trace back the moments where she took you for granted or assumed you wouldn't walk away. She begins to see that your leaving wasn't a reaction. It was a boundary. This is the moment the dynamic truly shifts, because the man who walks away first becomes the man she can't replace. He becomes the man whose energy she remembers, whose presence she reconsiders, whose value she now measures against everyone else. Leaving first isn't about proving anything to her. It's about proving something to yourself, that you're willing to choose self-respect over emotional chaos, clarity over confusion, and peace over attachment. And that level of strength naturally reframes the entire connection, making you the one she chases because you became the one she can no longer control. Walking away isn't an act of weakness or surrender. It's the ultimate demonstration of inner strength. When you step back without fear, without panic, without clinging to what's slipping away, you show that your identity is not tied to someone else's presence. You reveal a powerful truth. You are whole with or without them. And that truth is what instantly shifts the way you're seen. Most people stay in situations not because they're happy, but because they're scared. Scared of being alone, scared of change, scared of losing someone, even if that person has already stopped valuing them. But when you walk away, you show that you don't operate from fear. You operate from self-worth. Not being afraid of loss means you trust yourself enough to let go of something that no longer aligns with your peace. It means you understand that holding on to someone who isn't meeting you halfway only drains your emotional strength. You choose to protect your energy instead of investing it in a place where it's not reciprocated. And that act alone immediately elevates you in the eyes of the one who thought you would stay no matter how little they gave. Walking away forces the other person to confront the reality they never expected. You weren't dependent on them. You weren't waiting for validation, attention, or affection. You weren't staying because you needed them. You were staying because you chose to. And when you choose to walk away instead, it sends a ripple through their entire sense of control. It challenges their assumptions, their expectations, their comfort. Suddenly, the person they thought would never leave becomes the person they can't stop thinking about. This is the moment they begin to feel what you felt. They feel the absence of your consistency. They feel the silence where your effort used to be. They feel the impact of your presence only when it's gone. And that absence becomes louder than any words you could have spoken. Because leaving isn't about making them chase. It's about ending the cycle of emotional imbalance. But the irony is, when you walk away with confidence and clarity, you often become the one they chase. Not because you manipulated the situation, but because you broke the pattern they relied on. You showed you're not afraid of losing someone who wasn't afraid of losing you. You walked away before you lost yourself. And that kind of emotional independence is rare, magnetic, and unforgettable. It forces people to reflect on the role they played. It makes them question why they didn't value you when they had the chance. It makes them realize that your departure came from strength, not pain. When you're not afraid of loss, you stop accepting crumbs. You refuse to beg for effort, attention, or communication. You start choosing peace over attachment. And that choice, made boldly and without hesitation, reveals a level of confidence that naturally commands respect. Walking away becomes the moment you reclaim your power and the moment they finally see what they risked losing. Distance has a way of revealing truth in a way closeness never can. When you're right there, communicating, giving, showing up, supporting, it's easy for someone to take your presence for granted. It's easy for them to overlook your effort because it feels constant. But the moment you step back, the moment you let silence replace conversation and space replace access, everything shifts. Distance removes the noise. It separates emotion from reality. It gives both people a moment to breathe, to process, and to finally see the situation without the influence of constant interaction. When you create distance, you give her the space to feel what she couldn't recognize while you were still available. She begins to notice the absence of your consistency. She remembers the comfort of your presence. She feels the quiet where your support once stood. And in that silence, her true feelings surface. Distance doesn't confuse her. It forces her to confront what she didn't want to admit, that your presence mattered, that your effort had weight, that your energy made a difference. Often it's only through absence that people understand the value of what they had. For you, distance brings clarity too. When you step away, you finally understand whether your connection was built on mutual desire or one-sided effort. You see who reaches out, who reflects, who takes accountability, who notices the gap you left behind. Silence reveals her intentions far more honestly than words ever could. If she truly cared, the distance wakes her up. If she didn't, the distance exposes her detachment. Either way, you gain clarity without chasing answers. Distance also detoxes your mind. When you're too close, emotions blur your judgment. You tolerate behavior you shouldn't. You overlook red flags because you're invested. But stepping back creates emotional oxygen. You can breathe again. You can see the patterns, the imbalances, the things you ignored just to keep the connection alive. You realize whether you were choosing her or choosing your fear of losing her. And that awareness alone alone is powerful. The beauty of distance is that it resets the dynamic without force. You're not arguing. You're not demanding change. You're not explaining your worth. You're simply removing your presence and allowing reality to do the speaking for you. It's in that separation that she begins to understand the role you played. She starts replaying moments, questioning her actions, recognizing her mistakes, and feeling the emotional gap you left behind. Distance becomes the mirror she looks into, often for the first time. It also creates a contrast, something the human mind responds deeply to. When someone goes from present to distant, from available to selective, from giving to reserved, it triggers reflection. It pushes them to reconsider their behavior and their feelings. That space can transform the entire connection because clarity born from distance is clarity that sticks. It forces emotional honesty on both sides. And through that honesty, you finally understand where you truly stand without guessing, chasing, or pleading. Self-respect changes the entire energy you carry, and energy is something people feel long before they understand it. When you operate from a place of self-worth, you naturally move differently. You speak differently. You show up differently. You stop tolerating disrespect, inconsistency, or half effort, not because you're trying to make a point, but because your standards won't allow you to shrink yourself for anyone. And that quiet confidence becomes magnetic. A man with self-respect doesn't overextend himself. He doesn't beg for attention, approval, or understanding. He doesn't try to prove why he deserves love. He knows his value, and because of that, he only engages with people who recognize and appreciate that value. This kind of energy immediately separates him from the majority because many people today operate from fear, insecurity, or attachment. But the one who stands firm in his identity becomes unforgettable. Women feel the difference. She can sense when a man respects himself because he doesn't collapse when things get difficult. He doesn't cling when she becomes distant. He doesn't chase when she tests boundaries. Instead, he maintains his emotional balance. And that balance is deeply attractive. It signals strength, stability, and maturity, qualities that make her feel safe and make her reevaluate the way she interacts with him. Self-respect also creates boundaries without you having to say much. When you honor yourself, you automatically stop engaging in situations that drain you. You stop giving your energy to people who don't reciprocate. You stop accepting excuses, mixed signals, or emotional confusion. And when she sees that you won't entertain those behaviors, it forces her to level up or lose access. This shift alone makes you more desirable because people chase what they can't control and respect what they can't manipulate. The most magnetic part of self-respect is that it shows you don't fear loss. You won't stay somewhere that doesn't feed your peace. You won't fight for someone who isn't fighting with you. You won't negotiate your needs to keep someone comfortable. That mindset places you in the position of emotional leadership, a role that naturally draws people in. She sees that you're guided by principle, not emotion. She sees that your strength isn't loud but steady, and that steadiness is captivating. Self-respect also elevates your presence. It makes you walk with certainty, speak with intention, and act with conviction. It sends a message that you trust yourself, that you're enough, that you won't compromise your dignity for temporary affection. And when a woman encounters a man like this, she feels the difference immediately. She remembers him. She notices him. She pursues him because she senses that this kind of energy is rare. People often chase what reflects their own desire for strength and stability. A man with self-respect mirrors the part of her that wants to be with someone grounded, confident, and centered. And when she sees that you treat yourself with care, discipline, and boundaries. She instinctively wants to be part of that world. Your self-respect becomes the reason she chases, because it shows her the kind of man she can't easily replace. Emotional leadership isn't about controlling someone. It's about guiding energy, setting the tone, and creating stability in moments where emotions can easily distort judgment. Women are naturally drawn to a man who can hold himself steady when everything around him feels uncertain, because emotional leadership signals strength, maturity, and direction. It shows that you're not driven by impulses or insecurities, but by clarity. And that clarity becomes something she relies on even if she doesn't admit it. A man who leads emotionally doesn't react to every shift in her mood. He doesn't fall apart when she becomes distant. He doesn't panic when challenges arise. Instead, he grounds himself. He listens. He observes. He responds from stability, not fear. This is powerful because most people today are driven by reactivity. They argue when they feel ignored, chase when they fear losing someone, or lash out when emotions rise. But emotional leadership looks different. It's calm, it's intentional, it's steady. And that steadiness is what separates a man from the rest. Women feel safe around a man who can regulate himself. They trust a man who can stay composed rather than escalate situations. They gravitate toward the one who can create emotional order when things become chaotic. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions. It means mastering them. A man who leads emotionally knows when to speak and when to stay silent. He knows when to step forward and when to step back. He doesn't lose himself while trying to understand someone else. When you show emotional leadership, you communicate that you are capable of handling life, not just moments. You show that you can carry responsibility, not just romance. You show that you can navigate challenges without collapsing. This kind of energy is deeply attractive because it gives her something she rarely finds: certainty. Certainty in your intentions, certainty in your behavior, certainty in your emotional presence. Certainty creates security, and security creates attraction. Emotional leadership also means refusing to be pulled into unnecessary drama. You don't respond to every test. You don't chase every emotion she expresses. You remain centered. When she pushes away to see how you'll react, you don't crumble. You stay grounded. When she becomes emotional, you don't attack. You stay calm. When she doesn't know what she wants, you don't force. You hold your frame. This ability to stay aligned with your values instead of her temporary emotions earns her respect on a level words can't reach. You also become emotionally attractive when you can guide the connection without controlling it. You don't demand. You don't manipulate. You simply lead by example. Your consistency, your boundaries, your emotional discipline create a space where the relationship can grow without chaos. And when she sees that you know how to guide the tone of the connection, she begins to follow that tone naturally. Women chase emotional leadership because it reflects emotional maturity. It signals that you're not afraid of tough conversations, not intimidated by emotional depth, and not overwhelmed by relationship challenges. She chases the man who leads emotionally because he gives her something even rare energy can't replace: a sense of direction, safety, and balance. Scarcity changes everything. When something becomes harder to access, the mind automatically assigns it more value. This is human psychology, not a strategy. When you stop giving unlimited access to your time, attention, and emotional availability, you create a natural shift in how you're perceived. You go from being familiar and predictable to someone she has to earn, understand, and appreciate. Scarcity isn't about playing games. It's about recognizing your worth and no longer offering yourself to someone who hasn't shown they deserve that level of access. When you were always available, always responding, always giving more than you received, she subconsciously believed you would never leave. Your presence became a constant, and constants are easy to overlook. People don't cherish what they're convinced they'll never lose. But the moment you step back, the moment you stop pouring energy into someone who isn't meeting you halfway, everything shifts. Suddenly, you aren't guaranteed anymore. And that shift triggers desire. Scarcity makes her reflect in ways abundance never could. When you're no longer the man who is always there, she has to sit with the emptiness your absence creates. She begins to feel the difference between having you and missing you. She begins to replay moments where she could have shown up better, communicated clearer, or appreciated you deeper. Scarcity forces her to evaluate the role you played in her life, not because you said anything, but because you removed what she took for granted. It also activates something deeper, curiosity. When you're not easily accessible, she starts to wonder what you're doing, who you're becoming, and why you shifted your energy. Curiosity creates interest, and interest leads to pursuit. She begins to notice the strength in your silence, the confidence in your distance, and the certainty in your boundaries. You transform from someone she assumed would stay into someone she now feels the need to understand. Scarcity also elevates your value because it shows you're not desperate for connection. It proves you're capable of choosing yourself over someone who didn't prioritize you. That independence is attractive. It signals emotional discipline. It shows that your life doesn't revolve around someone else's inconsistency. You become a man with purpose, direction, and standards, someone who has options, someone who isn't afraid to walk away, someone who doesn't need validation to feel whole. The more you focus on your growth, your goals, your peace, the more magnetic you become. Scarcity isn't about withholding. It's about naturally becoming someone who doesn't need constant engagement to feel fulfilled. When she sees that you're not chasing, not begging, not explaining yourself over and over, she begins to feel the pull. She realizes that your distance is a reflection of your value, not a punishment. And here's the truth. Desire is awakened not by pressure, but by contrast. When your energy is no longer freely available, she finally understands what your presence meant. She feels the gap. She feels the shift. And that feeling becomes the beginning of her pursuit, not because you played a game, but because you finally chose yourself. Walking away has a way of pulling the truth out of people in a way staying never can. When you're present, giving, and available, it's easy for someone to hide behind comfort, inconsistency, or mixed signals. It's easy for them to pretend they care, pretend they're confused, or pretend they're trying, because your presence covers the gaps in their effort. But when you walk away, when you remove the security of your energy, their real intentions finally surface. Walking away forces authenticity because it takes away the space where excuses and emotional games can survive. When you leave, you strip the connection down to its truth. Without your attention, her actions speak louder than anything she ever said. If she truly cares, distance exposes her desire. If she never did, distance exposes her detachment. Your absence becomes the test she can't talk her way out of. She can't fake effort when you're gone. She can't hide behind confusion when you're no longer feeding stability. She can't keep you as an option when you've already closed the door. Walking away forces her to reveal whether she valued you or simply valued the comfort of having you. Most men stay because they think staying will fix the confusion. They think explaining more will bring clarity. They think giving more will secure loyalty. But sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is step back and let the truth show itself. Silence exposes her priorities. Distance exposes her character. Your absence exposes her intention. You learn more from her reaction to your walking away than you ever did from her words when you were still there. If she reaches out, takes accountability, reflects, communicates, and tries to repair the connection, those are actions rooted in authenticity. Those are actions that show she sees your value now that she can no longer take it for granted. But if she stays silent, shows no concern, or moves on instantly, those are truths you needed to see. Not to hurt you, but to free you from investing in someone who never matched your investment. Walking away also forces authenticity within yourself. When you leave, you confront your own fears, the fear of being alone, the fear of losing someone you cared about, the fear of letting go of the potential you wished the connection had. But once you choose yourself, once you step back from emotional confusion, you begin to see your own patterns clearly. You notice how much you were giving. You see how much you were tolerating. You realize how often you were sacrificing your own peace just to maintain a bond that wasn't balanced. And from that clarity, you begin to operate differently. You stop explaining your worth. You stop negotiating your standards. You stop excusing someone's inconsistent behavior. Walking away forces you to be honest about what you want, what you deserve, and what you will no longer accept. In the end, walking away isn't about punishment. It's about truth. It reveals who she is. It reveals who you are. It reveals what the connection was built on and what it wasn't. It forces authenticity by removing everything false, everything convenient, everything unclear. And from that truth, you finally gain the freedom to move forward with strength, clarity, and self-respect. When a man leaves first, he takes ownership of his story instead of allowing someone else to define it for him. He stops reacting to the emotional climate of the relationship and starts acting from a place of self-awareness and intention. Walking away before the situation breaks him, confuses him, or traps him gives him the power to determine what happens next, not out of ego, but out of clarity. He chooses to step back rather than be pushed away. He chooses to protect his dignity rather than wait to be discarded. He refuses to let the connection shape him into a weaker version of himself. And in doing so, he controls his narrative. When you leave first, you're no longer the man waiting for answers, excuses, or validation. You're no longer the man trying to hold together something that only falls apart in your hands. You decide the moment the dynamic no longer aligns with your peace. You decide when confusion becomes too heavy. You decide when the emotional imbalance becomes too costly. Instead of being reactive, you become intentional, and intentional men become unforgettable. Controlling your narrative also means refusing to be the man who stays through disrespect or emotional chaos just to prove loyalty. You're not abandoning the connection. You're abandoning the version of yourself that tolerated what should never have been acceptable. This level of strength shifts everything. It shows her that you weren't attached out of insecurity. You weren't staying because you had no options. You walk away because your values are non-negotiable and because your self-respect comes before any temporary feeling. When a man leaves first, he takes away the power of being rewritten in her mind. She can't say you chased too much. She can't say you stayed after she faded. She can't say you clung to something already dying. Your decision becomes a statement. I know my worth, and I know when something no longer serves me. That statement stays with her long after you've gone. It challenges her assumptions. It forces her to reflect. It rewrites the image she had of you. Walking away also breaks the cycle of emotional conditioning. Many women become accustomed to men who wait no matter how badly they're treated. They assume they can pull away without losing anything. But when you're the man who walks away first, you disrupt that pattern instantly. You show her that access to you is not guaranteed. You show her that your energy cannot be mishandled. You show her that love doesn't mean self-abandonment, and that changes the way she sees you because you become the man who refuses to be written into the passive role. Most importantly, controlling your narrative means controlling your growth. Walking away gives you space to rebuild, refocus, and realign with who you want to be. It allows you to heal without being trapped in emotional noise. It lets you create a future based on your terms, your standards, your direction, not on someone else's uncertainty. A man who leaves first doesn't lose the story, he rewrites it. He becomes the author of his own path, the protector of his own peace, and the builder of a life that no longer waits for someone else to choose him. When you look at the entire journey, one truth becomes clear. A man who values himself first becomes the man no one forgets. Walking away isn't about ego, power, or winning. It's about choosing clarity over chaos, self-respect over attachment, and emotional strength over fear. Every shift that happens afterward, her reflection, her pursuit, her recognition of your worth, comes from the moment you decided to stop abandoning yourself. Leaving first reframed the dynamic. Distance revealed truth. Self-respect became your foundation. Emotional leadership set the tone. Scarcity awakened her desire. Authenticity surfaced. And ultimately, you took control of your own narrative. You became the man who leads with intention, not reaction. The man who moves with purpose, not desperation. The man who understands that losing someone is never a loss when it saves you from losing yourself. In the end, this speech isn't just about why women chase the man who leaves first. It's about why becoming that man reshapes your entire life. Because the strongest version of you appears the moment you walk away from anything that forces you to shrink, settle, or silence your worth. And once you embody that strength, you stop chasing anything and start attracting everything.